Daniel trudged home. His shift at the diner had run late again, 3 a.m. The streetlights cast an eerie orange glow on the empty streets. Each footstep echoed in the silence, a lonely rhythm against the backdrop of the city holding its breath. A chill wind whispered through the building, sending a shiver down Daniel's spine. He just wanted to be home. Ahead, under a flickering streetlight, a figure stood motionless. Daniel's gaze snapped up. He hadn't seen anyone else for blocks. The figure was facing away, shrouded in shadow. It looked impossibly thin, almost skeletal, like a scarecrow caught in ill-fitting clothes. Daniel slowed his pace, a sudden unease gripping him. The figure began to sway slightly, not turning, just swaying as if dangling from an unseen thread. It was a subtle movement, but in the stillness of the night it felt profoundly wrong. Daniel's heart pounded. His hand instinctively went to his pocket, clutching his keys for some semblance of security. He couldn't shake the feeling that he should just turn around, run back the way he came. But curiosity, or perhaps a morbid fascination, held him rooted to the spot. The figure stopped swaying abruptly. It turned. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The figure was closer than he thought. It was a man dressed in a tattered suit that hung loosely on his gaunt frame. His face, pale and drawn, was locked in a grotesque smile, the smile that seemed to stretch beyond the natural confines of his lips. It wasn't a smile of joy or even amusement. It was the smile of a predator, reveling in some sick, twisted joke only it understood. The man's eyes were wide and vacant, devoid of any warmth or recognition. They stared straight through Daniel, as if he were looking at something beyond human comprehension. Daniel felt a cold dread creep up his spine, settling like a weight in the pit of his stomach. He had never seen anything like this before. It was as if something had crawled out of a nightmare and into his reality. "Hello, Daniel," the figure rasped. His voice was like dry leaves skittering across pavement, a sound devoid of any warmth or humanity. It sent a fresh wave of fear coursing through Daniel. How did this thing know his name? He hadn't seen its face, hadn't spoken a word, yet it knew him. Daniel stumbled backward, the metallic clinking of his keys, the only sound that dared break the eerie silence that had descended upon them. He wanted to scream, to run, but his legs felt like lead, his voice trapped in his throat. The figure took a step closer, the grotesque smile never faltering. "Don't be afraid, Daniel," the figure rasped, taking another step closer. The smile stretched wider, impossibly wider, as if it were about to split his face in two. "We're just getting acquainted." The words were slow, deliberate, dripping with an underlying menace that chilled Daniel to the bone. Daniel finally found his voice, though it came out as a choked whisper. Who are you?" The figure tilted its head, the unnatural grin never wavering. "You can call me the Smiling Man." His voice was a low growl that seemed to vibrate in the air around them. Daniel knew he had to get out of there. He couldn't stand there another second, trapped in the gaze of those vacant eyes, feeling the weight of that grotesque smile pressing down on him. He spun on his heel and ran. He didn't dare look back, the rasping voice echoing in his ears. He could hear his own ragged breaths, the pounding of his feet on the pavement. He didn't slow down, not even when he reached his apartment building. He fumbled with his keys, adrenaline surging through him, and finally stumbled through the door. He slammed it shut behind him, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. He was safe, or so he thought. Daniel's back was pressed against the door, his chest heaving. He slowly turned his head, dreading what he might see. And then he saw it. Standing at the end of the hallway, bathed in the dim light filtering in through his window, was the Smiling Man. The grotesque grin seemed to widen, if that was even possible, a mockery of comfort in the face of terror. Daniel choked back a scream. This was impossible. He had seen him with his own eyes, blocks away just moments ago. How could he be here? Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure flickered and vanished. The hallway was empty. Daniel was left trembling, his mind reeling from what he had witnessed. Was it real? Had he imagined it? He wanted to believe he had. But the chilling memory of the Smiling Man's vacant eyes, the rasping voice, felt all too real. The next day, whispers started circulating through the city. A woman walking home late had seen a tall, gaunt figure with a grotesque smile standing under a streetlight. A young couple out for a late-night drive had seen him standing on the side of the road, his unnatural grin a beacon in the darkness. The smiling man was no longer just Daniel's nightmare. He had become the city's, and he was still smiling.